All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 312. We're recording this episode live on January 8th, 2026. I'm your host, Nick Roome, and I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby. Barry, how are you?
I'm very well. Happy New Year. It's great to be back in the studio.
Same to you, man. Happy New Year. It is great to be back. We are back when we promised. We're back when we said we'd be. We're back, and I hope that's a good sign for the year. So yeah, and we got a great show for you lined up as well. We're gonna be looking ahead, or I guess looking at the present, at 2026, and what some of the UX design shifts and trends are that we can expect this year. It's an interesting list. We'll go through the whole thing a little bit later, but first, just a couple programming notes or community update. Barry, would you like to tell us what's going on over at 1202? You got any exciting updates?
Yeah, we're actually going to do stuff in 1202 this year.
What?
Which I know I've been teasing this for a while, but it's actually going to happen. We are changing the format slightly. We are going for 12 solid interviews, so we're going for one a month, mainly because we want to ease ourselves back in. There is a half plan about doing some more chat type stuff in between, but at the moment we're going to keep it simple. We've got 12 interviews coming up, so one a month, and so we'll have the first one out at the end of January. But looking forward to get back into that saddle too.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to listening to my second favorite podcast once again. All right. Well, let's not belay the news. Let's get into it. Yes, that's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, what is the story this week?
Well, this week we are looking at the 10 UX design shifts that basically redraw the map for human technology interaction in 2026. Instead of hand-wavy predictions, the author leans on real work with enterprise design teams and conference chatter to show how explainable AI, agentic AI, and dynamically generated interfaces are changing what it means to design a screen. Voice finally becomes a serious multimodal partner to touch and visuals. Micro interactions graduate from sprinkles to the primary language of feedback. And augmented reality is quietly moving from flashy demo to everyday decision support. At the same time, personalization is being rethought about around user content and clear boundaries. Accessibility is treated as a core design constraint rather than a checkbox, and cross-platform continuity is becoming table stakes as people bounce between devices all day. Finally, biometric and passwordless authentication are reframed as interaction design problems, not just security plumbing. So, Nick, would you be able to go through and give us a brief overview of the all 10 items?
Yeah, you gave us a little bit of a preview there, but to go through them one by one, so there's 10 of these. The first one here is explainable AI becomes non-negotiable. The second one, agentic UX and human agent ecosystems, I guess is more prevalent. That was the title, so I'm just going off of what's there. Number 3, dynamic personalized interfaces generated on demand. Number 4, voice interfaces finally getting their moment. Number 5, micro interactions become the language. Number 6, AR transitions from demonstration to daily application. Number 7, personalization that respects boundaries. Number 8, accessibility becomes foundational, not supplemental. Number 9, cross-platform UX that works. And number 10, biometric authentication becomes the norm. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but Barry, in a rare moment, I'm going to let you go first with your thoughts.
Wow, privilege is mine. It must be like New Year or something. I don't know. There's bits in this list I really, really like, and I really want to get stuck into talking about them. But there are some things in here that are just, hold on, I'm fairly sure we've been saying this for a while. So explainable AI, it's not new, but I think it's really important. We have spoken about this in previous episodes where in the same way as Google Maps existed, we always used to work out what the route was. And then now we don't care. We just put in our thing and make it work. And I think that's where we're going to go with explainable AI. That will, right now, everyone's really serious about it, but we need to think further down the line. Voice being the next big thing. I've got to be honest. I started working on voice hardware, voice software, voice recognition software in 2000. 25 years later, it's still 26 years later, it's still the big thing. It's coming. Really, it's just, it is sort of getting there, but it is not a primary interface. I don't care what anybody says, until we can work out, until you get truly conversational interaction. Yeah, okay. Augmented reality, I think I'm going to leave that to you. I'm just going no. Accessibility, I love this one. Accessibility being made standard is what we're talking about. Whereas at the moment we have a lot of, you design some UI, and then you're like, oh right, how do I make it accessible to everybody? And it's kind of an adjunct to, and in some places I've seen, it's sort of not thought about until somebody turns around and says, hold on a second, you don't meet the standards, you don't meet best practice. Whereas now I like this idea that people are sort of saying, right, we need to build this in. We need to, because you're talking about making it not just for a subset of people, but a lot more people using a lot more of the accessibility tools. So love the fact that that's going to be a standard, not the exception. Nick, what stands out for you?
There's a few of these line items that stuck out to me. I think just broadly, as we comment on this, know that this is one person's prediction of what to expect for 2026. We'll all have our own predictions, but I think this this list is very optimistic by nature, and I think that's it. Okay, all right. I don't mean that as like a negative thing. I mean it as a positive thing. We should be trying to reach for the stars when it comes to, how humans interact with technology. So the ones that stuck out to me, let me comment on this one. So you left the AR to me. Thank you for that. This one, AR transitions from demonstration to daily application. I don't think it's going to do that this year. Is this our next, flying cars are coming within the next 2 years? Augmented and virtual reality are going to be the thing this year. This is it. This is the one that's going to do it. I don't know. I see where the prediction came from. There's a lot of technology coming out, but I don't think it's quite there yet. And then another one that stuck out to me was the personalization that respects boundaries. I'm very hopeful about that one. I think there's a lot of interesting things that some of the latest technology can do, especially when it comes to, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but like vibe coding, what can that do in terms of like personalization, and how can we make, or how do we start up these apps that are designed for the thing that you need to do? That's interesting. There's some wishful thinking about one of these, especially given this current administration, at least here in the States, where accessibility becomes foundational, not supplemental. You're talking about, companies that are based in the United States, where DEI was basically stripped away by an executive order. It's wishful thinking. I really hope accessibility becomes foundational, but I am not super hopeful on that one, given the importance that our government is putting on it. And then the last thing that I took note of from this list was the cross-platform UX that works. There's a lot of focus on, at least just anecdotally, the experience that you have across apps, no matter how you're interacting with that thing. And this is sort of like the end-to-end user experience or customer experience of a product. And I really think that end-to-end customer experience is becoming more of, like they are suggesting, something that works. Like I said, we can talk a little bit more about it, but that's sort of my top, the things that came to my mind immediately when looking at this list. Now, let's. Yeah, you were going to say something. I didn't want to interrupt what you were going to say.
I was going to say, should we? I really want to dig into some of these in a lot more detail, because so should we take them one at a time and strip them out of it?
Let's do it. All right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. So let's take it away with explainable AI, and that becoming a non-negotiable piece in technology.
I think it's it's maybe slightly optimistic to say that it becomes non-negotiable. I get what the author is trying to say. However, it is still a lot of work to make it happen. And also, I think it is going to be a time limited function, because I think, and it's part of this trust element, that at the moment we've got two almost cohorts of people, or maybe three, but let's go for two. That you got people who are just using it, or are very optimistic about using it. And I probably fit more into that category. I see it's a tool, and we are going to crack on and use it. But then you've got the skeptic group that it's terrible, it's taking over the world. Even some people that I respect and all that sort of stuff are so adamantly against anything that mentions AI that this means nothing to them anyway. It's not going to be appeasing to them. But the idea that AI is going to be focused to showing under the hood why and how it got to its decisions is definitely part of this evolution where it needs to be at the moment. It needs to do this in order to engender trust. What do you think, Nick?
I think you're right. I see also where the author is coming from with this, and I wonder if their perspective is more for consumer grade products, because I'm thinking about something like any of these large language models. What they've done now is they've sort of put themselves into modes. When they're in thinking mode, it's actually explaining the rationale that the LLM is going through to get to the end result that you are trying to get to. And that's nice for when there's a delay in the answer that comes through. But I think you have to think a little bit broader from this perspective when it comes to AI providing support for decision systems, right?
Mhm.
Like decision support systems. I can imagine that over explaining, um, how it got there, it could almost increase the cognitive load of the final decision maker, where they need to make a decision, and there are situations in which those decisions need to happen quickly. Um, the the low risk situations, I can see it being like, okay, provide all the rationale for how the AI got here. In high risk scenarios, it'd be like the provide the key points here that influence your decision, rather than the entire A to Z flow of how you got there. What are the key factors of this decision, and why help support me as the operator in whatever the thing is that I'm doing. I see the value, but I don't know if it's necessarily for every context. I think it really will. Oh no, where's the it depends button? I think it really will depend on who's doing what.
It certainly does. I mean, certainly from my own experience, last couple of years, I've been developing user interfaces for AI, and a key part of that has been explainability. And one of the things that we sort of got to very quickly was with so much users, they initially thought that they wanted to see everything under the hood in order to make their decision. You're like, well, actually, we very quickly got to that piece of, well, if you're getting it to explain everything, the whole point of getting the system to do that is so you don't have to worry about it. And one of the most insightful interface elements that I ended up building was a simple RAG, red, amber, green status symbol beside a decision element that was made. So it came out with a proposal for a decision output, and it would have basically a red, amber, green to say green really meant that there was very little behind it, in terms of it was a very simple decision to be made. The number of key elements, very few, and if you wanted to click the button, you could review it in milliseconds. Amber was a certain number. I can't necessarily go into the number or the complexity. And red was, there's a lot of complexity or uncertainty here, and there was a certain nuance behind that. And so that would, if you had a red decision that you're like, okay, you could press it and look under the hood about how it got there, which then it basically allowed the operator to understand whether this was something that they should be spending more cognitive effort on or not, which was really interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of stuff comes along and how it goes across to the civilian space. Because as I mentioned in the initial bit, I always go back to the Google Maps demonstration. The fact that we initially, when all this sort of came into play, we wanted to know the optional route, why it chose the route we wanted it to choose. And there's loads of evidence to show that we would go and investigate that. Whereas now we just don't do it. We go, Google Maps is showing the route, and we start driving. In fact, we press go on the route after we've left. So we don't evaluate our routes beforehand. We trust it to tell us where it's going, unless something dramatic happens.
And
And
I've already seen that happening with the Google search results. Like,
yeah,
you know,
right.
people, you ask somebody to Google something, or somebody's curious about something. I've been in the presence of others, especially over the holiday season, where somebody's Googled a question that we had, and then, you know, I know they're reading off the AI answer that's at the top, and they just take it at face value. But then they have these negative opinions towards AI. But you know,
Is that another point though? Actually, and we should probably stop this one in a minute. But
probably.
this is fine when we are talking about people who are knowingly using AI elements or LLM elements, which would be, I guess, a bit more high fidelity on the terms we're using. But if you know that you're using in some sort of AI agent, that's fine, and you know that. But if it's so pervasive now in a lot of technologies, you're using it quite a lot without knowing that you're using it. Therefore, is there an element of that that we need to play with? Anyway, we should probably move on.
Okay, one more note on this, and yes, I think we do. And all the conversations that we're having around this are important to number 2, so
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. The thing that I think is going to be, like, here's my own prediction for 26. I guess that is the year that we're in. Is that we're actually going to go in the opposite direction. There's like all these negative opinions towards AI, and I think one thing, rather than the AI explaining their thought process or how they become to, you know, a solution, I think there's going to be like a separate marker on um stuff on the internet, not just with content, but, you know, across the internet, that says this was made by a human. And we're going to swing back in that direction. So now we'll have labels on things that will, anyway. So let's talk about agentic UX and human agent ecosystems. Because this is also, you know, when it comes to AI agents, there's a lot of interest here for what they can do. And I would leverage the experience of others who have more experience in this. And I only say this because I know Andres is watching, but I think there's there's a lot to be said about human agent ecosystems and where the current state is at. And there's no well, there are several enterprise consumer grade agents that can do jobs okay-ish. But that's where we're at. And I don't think we're quite at the level of having an ecosystem where you can write a prompt and then agents go off and do certain parts of your prompt. I just don't think we're that sophisticated enough yet with the consumer grade stuff.
Yeah.
In I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the idea is right to a certain extent. And there is certainly, I can think of a couple of examples about where this is definitely in the mix. I would say that with my own experience, there is a mix of human machine teaming elements, of which a part of that that machine piece is a number of agents working as part of a larger system. But there are, I guess, there's a couple of examples in the civilian space that are marketed quite heavily. And I can't remember the name of the one itself, but it's for a business support tool that identifies 7 or 8 different agents within the tool. That one looks after your social media, one looks after your internal stuff, one will write do your planning for you, and all they are really are in large handfuls are different large language models that have almost a different background to them, a different knowledge and learning, or a different focus, or probably just really good marketing of the same one. But hey, let's not be too cynical. But I think the idea behind this around, you know, you're not just having 10 LLMs, you're probably having an LLM do one thing, a neural net do another, and different tools for different things, but having an agent. Really what this is leaning into is an agentic manager that manages all of them for you. So you're effectively having a single interface and saying, I want my social media planned and delivered for the year based on these principles, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll have one that's a scheduler, one that's a designer, one that's go off and do it. We probably, that the nuance behind it is probably more for the suppliers, the delivery people who do that. Whereas from the UX perspective, we just want to see one interface. We just want to say, go away and do. So I think it is probably right, but it's more of an implementation under the hood thing than than the thing the consumer sees, and different things whizzing off doing different things.
Yeah, we'll need some sort of dashboard.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a thing though. It's how we fundamentally, it leans into how do we manage AI, multiple AI instantiations within any particular product or system.
All right, let's talk about this number 3, dynamic personalized interfaces generated on demand. I think this one's pretty cool to think about in terms of maybe generating these customized views of dashboards for a certain thing, like maybe a human agent ecosystem manager. But I think there's, with the vibe coding being a thing, love it or hate it, that people are using it. I wonder if there are procedural ways in which developers could make something that aligns with the product that they're using, but is personalized towards the ask, right? So if you're using like a LLM chatbot assistant, where you say, "Hey, I need a view that does X, Y, and Z on my banking app," and that banking app has some sort of way to translate that request, hook into the data pieces, and display that to you in a personalized view. That would be pretty cool. I don't, again, like, it's hopeful. I really hope it does become a thing, because I can think of a million different use cases for this. But what are your thoughts on a personalized interface generated on demand?
I've 2 threads. One is when you're designing anything vaguely to do with a safety critical system, this is just going to be interesting. I'm not saying it's a no, because I do love the idea of dynamic dashboards and things like that, to show you what you need to see and what you need to act on. How do you test it? How do you assure such a platform? So that's me looking at that whole safety critical element, which has a whole bunch of stuff around it that you just have to be sure about what's happening, or at least understand the behavior in a vaguely understandable, repeatable way. However, put that in a little box. The rest of it, I think it puts a lot more emphasis on us as UX designers to make sure that things like your style guides and that are absolutely solid. To make sure that you've got all of them elements in place, and that they more about the interoperability, because I've seen quite a lot of style guides that you put them together with all their elements, but you don't necessarily think about every single interaction, because you always think about them in predefined frames of one way or another. What this is really talking about is saying, right, we'll take your toolbox and use that, and so any sort of it's going to take a while to get the guidance absolutely right. But it could be quite cool. Like I said, I really like the idea of these dynamic dashboards. That dashboards are really popular at the moment, and I've got a whole lot of criticism around that. But the fact that if you can get it to dynamically show what is important to your business or your system or your enterprise, whatever it is, rather than having just 7 or 8 different charts there waiting to you look at every day and that type of thing, it could be really quite cool. The versatility of it could be amazing. We need to make sure it gets away from just being glitzy, showy and stuff, which I kind of feel it's at the moment.
The author writes here in the article that the design, from the design perspective, they're handing off these fixed screens, but rather doing the constraints behind the scenes, establishing those safety rails, the evaluation criteria that shape how the interfaces operate. So the toolkits, like you said, to make these things happen. All right, Barry, you had brought up voice interfaces in your initial reaction. Since 2000? What is it this year? Is this the year?
Yeah, no, it's not the year. It's absolutely not the year. Right. So like I said, when I first started working in voice, it was largely done on a hardware card, and you had to have that done, and it was largely very much keyword driven and with strong structures and things like that. And so you had to, in your head, know what the structure was of the command chain that you were using. You had to hold that as a mental model. Now you then move into software driven voice control. Great. And that was much better. It would understand different people's accents and things like that. Brilliant. And we now, come up to now, and we've got things like Alexa and basically home agents and things like that that do understand keyword based, but more sort of more conversational AI, voice interaction. But you still have to know what the system can do. So if you've got the Spotify app or whatever going there, you know that you can then get music. But if you haven't got another app, if you haven't got the BBC iPlayer app, then you can't pull up BBC iPlayer stuff. And so you have to sort of know the structures of what it's doing, and it's still got keywords that it's listening for. We're not really, in my opinion, going to see true useful voice technology that can replace whatever else is going on until you can have truly conversational AI that you don't need, conversational interaction where you can just walk in and say, turn the lights on. And it will do that. And you don't have, without any pre-setting up, it will understand that it wants you to switch the lights on in the room that you're in and do that now, or set the temperature and things like that. It's miles better than it was in 2020. Don't get me wrong, but it's still miles away from being useful.
I see where this is coming from. This is coming from a lot of this stems from AI and how a lot of these LLMs have voice modes now.
Mhm.
And fine. I think we still need kind of along the lines of number 2, the agentic layer. I think we need that agentic layer over all the other things that we use as somebody to interpret what we say into commands. Somebody wrote, this was a couple years ago at this point, but when LLMs were, when the voice mode just came out, they had, or maybe it wasn't even voice mode. It was taking a transcript of what somebody had said and translate it into a home assistant command. I almost said the word. I'm sorry. I didn't want to wake anybody's devices. Into a home assistant command. So when they would say, "Oh, it's a little cold in here," right? Then that thing that they wrote would translate that into turn the thermostat up by 10 degrees and send it to their voice assistant. So that way, they would talk naturally, but the things that they were saying were interpreted by that middle agent layer. It wasn't truly an agent. It was an LLM processing that stuff and then turning it into a command for the home device. So that way, the heat turns on when they say it's a little cold in here. So I think something like that, to say, I want to listen to some music. They know which app to go to and which playlist to play, depending on the context where you're at. Is it what volume to play it at? Are you in a gym? Do you have your headphones in? Are you in your car? Do you want to blast the music? Like, those types of things. Okay. We're at number 5 and we're about halfway through the hour. So I think this might be a full hour breakdown here. We'll see. Let's get into this this number 5, and then we'll take a little break and we'll come back to these. Number 5, micro interactions becoming the language. So the key thing here from the article is that micro interactions are serving, or they anticipate that these micro interactions will serve as the primary communication between interfaces and users, where these actions are confirmed without requiring people to pause and digest information, or confirmation messages and provide feedback. I don't know. What do you think, Barry? That seems a little.
I know, and that's not a thing. So I think there is definitely a digital generational aspect to this, because I think that the ways that we, in fact, I would say there's probably a difference in the way that I interact with things like phones and things like them and my devices, and it'll be different to the way that you interact with your devices, which will definitely be very different to the way that my kids interact with the devices. It's almost this is almost the emoji argument of how do I use an emoji versus how do you use an emoji. What does your eggplant mean to you, basically, is what this is talking about. And so then when you add on these micro interactions, yes, it's it adds context and interaction with what you're doing. The thing I find hard with it is when you're designing stuff, why are you doing it? What are you trying to elicit out of the micro interaction? And therefore, how do you make sure that that message, if you're using this as a primary language rather than just a nice to have cool little thing, how are you making sure that your messaging is getting across in the way that you intend? And I think that some of this might be just down to I'm an older designer, and maybe I think that there is definitely a in the way that language itself changes and the way we use it, these type of things end up being a nuance of language and an evolution. It's still not the language, though, I don't think.
So really what we're talking about here is when we talk about micro interactions, we're talking about things like when you've they have a couple examples in here, but like the decorative flourishes.
Mm,
So a button shifting color when you hover over it, or a progress indicator filling, um, a celebration emoji when you finish a task. These are heavily considered like these nice to have details, and the author even says they were considered nice, polished, but weren't really necessary. And I guess the argument here is that those are becoming more necessary. And I would disagree that they are becoming more necessary. I think that as we have more capacity to work on things, we could send agents off to do things like these nice to have things.
mm.
I think there's probably still going to be a primary focus from a design perspective, from a human factors perspective, to make sure that that UI is usable and molds to the way that they're thinking about things, their mental map, their mental model, the way that they are expecting it to go in terms of the flow, and how, from a system perspective, it actually makes sense to interject these things in the moment. And I think those are the things that we focus on because we know that those are the most important things. If you don't have a system that works for you or that works in the way that you intend it to, who cares if a celebration emoji comes up? I'm super frustrated by the point that I even get to the finishing task, that it doesn't matter. And, oh, yay, an emoji. Okay, great. It's like it doesn't matter. So sending off agents to do those nice little flourishes I think is going to be a thing that maybe as we have more capacity and work with these agents, we can, it's a capacity issue. It's not a technology issue. We know how to
I
do it.
I guess that there is an element here as well, is when you look at the author's list of elements. So a button shifting color and a progress indicator filling. I don't think that's a micro interaction stuff. That's almost a key tenet of good UX design, where you're showing stuff that is a button is available or it's not, or a progress indicator. The flourish, like you say, is the little pot of confetti that goes off when something is finished, or you have a that celebration piece. That's possibly the flourish.
Not to
Um,
nitpick, but I think the progress indicator filling is literally, is there an animation from point A to point B, or does it
yeah,
just stack from one to two, right? Which doesn't matter.
well, yeah, true. But I think there is. I think there's possibly something that I think the way we've already ripped it to shreds to a certain extent. I think there's an element here that there's possibly confusion over what is good UX and what is the nice to have stuff now becoming necessary. No, I don't think it is. It's still nice to have. Um, yeah, so no, they don't win that one, I don't think.
All right, well, we'll continue the roast after.
We liked some of these so far,
We
didn't
do.
we?
Yeah, I don't want this to be a firing squad because there's a lot of the good stuff
Oh no,
here.
the good stuff is in the second half.
The good stuff is in the second half. We'll get to the
Yeah.
second half right after this. Stay with us. Yes, huge thank you as always to our Patreon patrons. You truly keep the lights on over here, and everything is running because of you. We really couldn't do this without you, and really appreciate everything that you give to the show. We seriously, you're the greatest of all time. You're the goats, as the kids would say. Uh, do kids say that? I don't know. What do kids say now? Let's get into the second half. Barry, you said that the second half was going to have the good stuff, and we start with this one where AR is transitioning from demonstration to daily application.
Yeah.
And I said I didn't want this to be a firing squad, so I'm going to quietly mention like two things and then Homer Simpson into this bush over here. I think there's two things that I want to bring up, and the first thing is that yes, technology is getting better. There are many makers out there that are providing devices that are less cumbersome and less what's the word I'm looking for? They're less cumbersome and there's less barriers to like putting the thing on and using it. They're coming now in like glasses forms. Great. Um, when you think about augmented reality, there's still a lot of barriers that we haven't figured out, like battery life, like projection mapping into your own personalized environment, the actual apps on the thing that make it effective, and the integration of those apps. There's still a lot of things that we still need to figure out. I don't think we're quite at the daily application, but you know what? I'm going to be optimistic and say, yes, December 31st, 2026, we will be closer.
Well, we've got to be closer. Closer to what? I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think, well, to be fair, you're right in that where we've come from to where we are now, we are in a very different space. I mean, even go back 15 years, Google Glass comes out, and people were having all sorts of uses, trying to work out how to use this augmented reality capability. And more recently, I think the biggest push out is what the Meta Ray-Ban sunglasses that have had a number of different interactions with them. Fundamentally, this boils down to what makes it useful. And there are some specific jobs where, yes, absolutely, this sort of thing is helpful, as long as it can map the terrain that you're working with and you're using that augmented piece well. Some people seem to think that if you can just throw up your email on your glasses, that's augmented reality. It's not. That's just a mixed reality of being able to use, being able to see through things while you're doing. It's got to actually allow you to interact with that environment in some way, or at least allow what you're seeing on your glasses to be interactive with the environment in some way. And there are only so many times and places where in the thing where that's actually truly useful on a daily civilian application. So you or I wearing them. I still want some because I love playing with this sort of gadget. There are other roles though where you could actually see we're probably at a place where some of it can be used. So maintenance types tasks, the surgery has always been one of these use cases that that this is crying out to use well. We still haven't got around the how do you keep them sterile and things like that, but we're probably closer. So I think I'm going to lean into what you said. I think by December we will definitely be closer to better be it being used. But to quote a colleague of mine here in the UK, the way we use terms like augmented reality are nothing like the actual reality of using them in the first place. So yeah, can we stop shooting these now? We've got to have some.
We're going to have some fun. We were optimistic about that one. December, we're going to be closer. Yes. All right. Number 7 here, personalization that respects boundaries. The author here says people want these personalized experience until they realize what the system needs to know to do them. And I think they bring up Netflix's recommendation engine, and they opt in to personalize when they thumbs up something. That's kind of what you signed up for. But the difference is like, take like an information broker and having advertisements being shown to you because of things that you may have hovered on a website to, or things that you glanced at once, is what they say here. And the hope here is that these personalization things will respect your boundaries when it comes to privacy. And we can talk a little bit more about privacy later, but this non-intrusive way to present some of these personalization things is you know what, I'm going to be hopeful and say yes, this is going to become a thing.
Um,
No, don't
yeah.
shoot it down.
I'm not going to shoot it down. I think there's an element here about we want to have our cake and eat it, because really, what we're talking about is not whether I'm getting shown the right advert on Google. That's how it manifests. Is we see, oh, why is my Facebook? I'm just searching for something on Google. Why is Facebook suddenly showing me things that I was looking at? That isn't for me the sinister part of this. That's actually just good business and good marketing, in the fact that I know that you're interested in something, and I'm going to do what I can to put my product in front of you. We have that when you walk into any grocery store, any shop, at physical shop, that shop is laid out. It's not just randomly laid. Some of them are, but it's not randomly laid out for whatever. That everything in that shop is strategically put together to appeal to the people who are going to walk through the door. So from that perspective, this isn't that isn't the way that they use data isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, it's when it's the undercurrent of it. It's the how they sell the data to each other. That basically you're providing data, and then they are profiting off you, not from your interaction with them, but just off your interaction being sold to somebody else. It's the way that it's sold into the black market, the dark web, and things like that. It's the way that the governments use the data without you knowing. I mean, I was shocked. I shouldn't have been, but I was shocked when I was looking at a product that came out of CEX. In one of the articles that we've been looking at, and there is a women's hormone tracker, and my wife turned around and said, "Oh, just if you do mention that, just make sure to recommend to every woman in the United States that they don't take that up, they don't use it, because anything you put into that system can be sold or obtained by the government and used against them, particularly in post Roe versus Wade." And you're like, wow, didn't even. And if you're just looking at this sort of stuff, would it enter your mind to think that deep into how your data is being used? So we get all up in arms about how your data is being used to promote stuff to you. I think that's nothing. It's the deep, it's the sinister, it's the stuff that goes on with your data that you don't know. So how we go about this, given what you mentioned earlier about how different governments are dealing with data, how we deal with this is going to be quite interesting. And I don't think any how we manage that and be less opaque about it, I think would be a really, really good thing. But it's going to take some big players. It's going to take your Metas, your Microsofts.
Well, here's some direct evidence that the tide is shifting, and I like to be positive. So the thing here is that we're talking about data, we're talking about our rights with privacy. I will say that oftentimes there are California is at the forefront of some of these privacy initiatives, and one that just came out this week is the drop. I don't know if it's like the Drop Act or Drop Function, Drop, Delete, Done, Delete Request and Opt Out Platform. That's what it stands for.
Right.
And what this does is allows California residents to log in and have these data brokers delete your data just like that.
Wow.
That's what it's for. And this is for anyone who's a California resident. It's privacy.ca.gov/drop. So you can go and do this right now. If you're a California resident, you can get started. You can sign in and verify your eligibility by saying you live in California. So I couldn't do it here in Arizona. Create your profile, and then you submit your request, and then boom, all your data is gone. And that is awesome. And it's good to see that things like this are happening. Okay. We have just a few more, so let's kind of speed run through these as we have about 13 minutes left. Let's see. So we talked about personalization that respects boundaries, accessibility becoming foundational and not supplemental. You seem pretty hopeful on this one.
Yeah, I think so. I think the idea that we build accessibility into what we do as standard rather than it being a bolt-on is a really good thing. And there are standards out there that that allow you to check for these sort of things, but they're always almost an extra rather than being the way we do work. So I think if we can build this in, and really it's about there is a business case for doing this, in the fact that we normally think about people, when we talk about accessibility, people being blind but still being able to access stuff. Actually, it's just being able to change the size of the text, so people with different reading styles or different reading abilities can engage with that stuff, as well as having the big stuff like read aloud and things like that. So accessibility is becoming broader. If you look at if you've got an iPhone or an Android, look at the accessibility functions that are available within the accessibility area. That is much broader than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you might have some changes of light and changes of size and stuff. Whereas now there are so many different elements that you can tune your device for it to be more accessible to you.
Yeah, I think this is going places. I think there's there's a lot of programs, at least that are government funded here, that require projects to adhere to something called 508 compliance, and section 508, and it has a lot to do with like the web content accessibility stuff. And so I think building that in is good, and having a lot of um, companies that do government contracts, they'll need to do this by default almost anyway. So why not roll it into the other stuff that they're working on? Yeah, it makes sense to me. It tracks. Even though I jested in the original thing that this is probably not going to be as much of an importance given the current administration. I think it still is important. And I think a lot of people know it's important. And like you said, accessibility is a good business case. You design for all, and then or you design for a special population, and everyone benefits from it. So I'm right there with you. All right, this cross-platform UX that works. This one's cool to me. I think I really do think there's a lot of focus on this cross-platform UX, and I think it comes from everything from like shopping all the way down to like actual utility apps, right? So I'm thinking about two examples in particular that not everyone, but a lot of people have experience with. One of which I'll just mention, like Amazon, right? They're doing a good job. No matter if you log on to their mobile app to buy something or the desktop, it's kind of a seamless experience. The things that you looked at on one, and I know that's a very simplistic answer, or it's a very simplistic example, but it's an example that works, right? The things that you look at on one platform are going to be there on another platform. The lists that you do, it's applied on both. The other thing that I think works really well is, and this is a selfish plug for you to get on our Discord server, but Discord is also a really good one that works where you can log in on your phone, log in on any device, and chat seamlessly across, and those messages sync, and all that stuff. Again, very simplistic thing. It's mainly just a call for you to get into our Discord so you can have conversations with us. We're bored and want to have conversations. But I think there are many other scenarios where this would work well, like task software, or any of these pieces where they would need to hold information on a database and then retrieve it when you access it on a different platform, whether it's a dedicated device or your phone or your desktop or your work computer or whatever. I think we're all working towards a much better future here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, for me, a really good example at the moment, I think I've mentioned them twice already, Microsoft have really got their game together with Office 365. You can be doing it on the app, you can have a web version of it, you can do it on your phone, on a tablet, and you've largely got access. So it's smooth across the different bits. I can be working it on my laptop and then pick it up, edit the same document in the evening on my on my phone, and have other people playing and on the same document at the same time. So I can choose the most appropriate UX that I want to engage with, and I think that's where a lot of these are going. It's almost less important that you have a specific interaction with the app. It's the data that's important. It's the content that you're working with that is now the prime driver. And the more accessible you make that, that data, then irrelevant of the platform. So whether you're producing an app and it's going on to the Play Store or the App Store or wherever, you've got to be able to do the interactions and be able to do the same thing across all of them. You want a seamless experience. And we definitely working towards that, because again, the business benefit is there. The more you can have that seamless cross-platform engagement means that your audience is going to stay with your product for longer and engage with them. So it is that's absolutely something that has made a huge amount of progress, I think, over the past 5 years, and I think will do even more so over the next 12 months.
Yeah. Last one here. Biometric authentication becomes the norm. I'm kind of surprised that this is a prediction, because I already kind of feel like it is, but maybe it's just for the way that I use it. I use my thumbprint to get into my phone. I use it for the passkey authentication when I get into certain programs and log into certain accounts. To me, it's there, and I do it. And I think the big point here is mainly not necessarily the biometrics piece, but this passwordless login, where you enter a verification code instead of a password, or you enter in a like a authenticator code, or you hit the numbers that are matching on the screen. And I think it's these ways that we reduce the cognitive load of needing to remember a password, and providing other options to verify that, yes, it is in fact the person that we want to get into this account that is trying to get there. And I think we're close, if we're not there already. When passwords will disappear, I don't think that's this year, but I think it will go away even more by December 31st.
I think you're right. I think we're definitely moving that way. I think, however, there is a lot of, and I would say larger organizations, I would say probably more defense-oriented organizations as well, that will just grip the password like they just don't want it to die. Yet they still insist on 12 to 14 characters and make them really hard to remember. And yet you must have a separate password for every single system, which nobody ever does. We won't use password for platform programs and stuff like that. For some reason, cyber professionals are really reluctant to get rid of the traditional password, when yet on a grassroots basis, we all use Face ID on our phones. As you said, you can use fingerprint to get into your phone and things like that. Biometric is almost a grassroots movement that really the big players need to embrace. And this is it's a real UX issue, because just before Christmas, I was part of a panel at a conference that was highlighting the fact that a lot of security personnel, cybersecurity personnel, we're saying, oh yes, you need this. We're going, no, you need to make it usable. You need to make it so people engage with it and it's easier. It shouldn't be security shouldn't be a dirty word. Security should be integrated, but there is an element around security. Security still likes to be special. This will hopefully get away from that.
Yeah. Well, that's the story for this week. Huge thank you to our friends over at UX Collective, and special shout out to the author of this paper is Aaron Bomick. They're the chief design officer at SAP. So a lot of these are obviously driven by industry perspective. But huge thank you. This is a great article for us to discuss. If you want to follow along with all the other articles that we post, we have a Discord, like I just mentioned. You can join us for more discussion on these stories and much more. We're not going to take a break because we already did that. Let's just get into the last part of the show. We'll skip it came from for this week. We have plenty of discussion to talk about for next time. But Barry, what is your one more thing?
So I'll have a quick shout out to say, in the UK, we've just had sort of snow flurries, and as I think I mentioned in the pre-show of the, currently sat in the middle of waiting for the a big storm to come and smack us in the UK. So we just can't deal with snow. We can't deal with anything outside of our usual mediocre temperature. So everything ground to a halt this week, which I just found, from a human factorsy perspective, I just find really amusing that we're in the vast edge case, and then everybody's going, why can't the council grit our roads? And the problem is like, well, because we only do it like 2 or 3 times a year, because the rest of the time it's just wet. Anyway, so there's a whole edge case expectation piece. My really one more thing, which I mentioned at the top of the show, is I had a bit of a mini project over the Christmas period to really look at how AI and LLMs are being used to develop software, having spoken to a few friends of mine now who are software developers and how they're using AI in their day-to-day. Now, I did a whole, but I used to be a software engineer, and as I guess my first career, and so, but haven't really kept up with the software engineering standards, and so just leave that to other more qualified people. But let's delve in, let's try a few different tools and really try and develop some of the software I've been trying to develop for a long time. And so one of the things I've been trying to develop is a human factors tools for doing user trials and measurement and things like that, and stuff that I've been trying to develop for the longest time. I was able to use 2 or 3 different LLM based platforms to develop the software in minutes. Something that would have taken me a long time, and actually to a decent quality, to something that I was able to test, go into the code, look at it, and do all that sort of stuff. And I have to say, it's blown me away. Developing proper full-on stuff that I could actually go in and get into the back of. So it's not just developing something that's just a fancy bit of UX, but actually looking at the stuff in the background and how it's put it together. I had great fun, and a proper busman's holiday bit of a thing, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Look out, world! Barry's vibe coding.
Yeah,
look out. My one more thing's very, very different from yours. It's you ever get a power tool in your hands and you just feel unstoppable?
Yes.
I received a weed whacker as a gift from my parents this holiday season, and man, that thing is fun. It just has so much power. It's an electric one, so you don't have to carry on the cord with you, and it just it does the spinning and the weed whacking, and then you're just whacking everything, and you just, oh, it's so much fun. And then you spend an hour out there, and then you realize that you're covered in dirt and peppered with rocks, and just you should have not worn shorts and flip-flops. So this is your reminder to wear PPE whenever you can. It's a PSA for you. OSHA would be very proud of me, I think, for the gear that I was wearing. Shorts and flip-flops with glasses, no protective goggles. So yeah, don't do that. Don't be like me. Be like Barry and vibe code. But that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about the upcoming stuff you can expect for 2026, I'll encourage you to go listen to any of our other prediction-based episodes and see how wrong we got it. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of this story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community and comment over there. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a few ways that you can do that. One, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you're watching or listening right now. That is free for you to do and really helps out the show. 2, the thing that helps out a little bit more is that you can tell your friends about us. If you're embarrassed by us, then what are you doing here? I don't know. You should just tell your friends about us so they can be embarrassed too. Or 3, if you have the financial means to and want to contribute to this show that way, you can consider supporting us on Patreon, and that goes to much more than just the show. That helps support the lab and the folks that we have in the lab creating fun and interesting ways, which we'll always have more stuff to talk about later. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about vibe coding?
If you want to come talk about that, find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, most socials except for the ones we don't talk about anymore. as well as if you want to listen to me chat to really cool and inspiring individuals and teams and groups in the Human Factors community, find me on 1202 The Human Factors Podcast at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. If you're watching live, stay tuned for the post show. For the rest of you, thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends.